presentation report. I could not start my class on time. Still, I wanted to take a class because wanted to finish as soon as possible of your syllabus. So we will start. I will start my class immediately. Okay. I hope you can hear me. Can anyone respond whether you can hear me or not?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
we.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I have explained about, in the last class, I have explained about working capital management. What is working capital? What is the main objectives of working capital management? And what I mean, are the concepts of working capital? Like we have a time-based concept and the concept-based types of working capital and time-based type of working capital. So I hope you can still remember that. Let me take your attendance at the end of the class, okay? Now, after this class, I will be sending you PDF files and PPT files, okay, for the class. So for today, I'll be talking about why do we need to have working capital and what are the determinants of working capital. Why do we need, why do we, as when I talk about we, I am talking about the business, okay, the business farms or the corporation. So why do the business farms or why do the business, the corporation needs to have working capital? So, and I will be talking about the determinants of working capital also means factors which contributed to the requirements of working capital. Okay, so now I will just be opening my PDF files. I have not made PPT for today because it will be good for you if I have like given you a PDF format. I mean PDF notes. Okay, so I'll be sharing now. Can you see this one? These PDF files? I'll be just explaining from the PDF files, okay? Instead of making PPT and giving you again notes. So I will just take this as I mean I will just give you as a note also. So can you see the PDF files here? Mutayem?
Yes, Miss.
Yes,
Okay.
miss.
Yes. Why do we need for working capital? Why do we need working capital? It is a fund required for running a business operations, a current operations. Okay, so why do we need to have working capital? Okay, so maximization of shareholders' wealth is possible only when there is sufficient return from operations. You know, maximization of shareholders' wealth is the main objectives of the firm. Okay, so shareholders can be held to those who subscribe to the shares of a company. Okay, shares of a company. So the main aim of the that shareholders is to get maximum their main aim of these shareholders, why they subscribe to the company's share, is that they want to get sufficient return from their subscriptions of shares, right? So it is only possible when there is sufficient return from the operations. Okay, so therefore, the earnings of the profits naturally depend upon the magnitude of sales, the number of sales that you can make. Okay, so uh, successful sales activity is very required for earning profits. Okay, so but sales, of course, sales is required, but sales do not convert into cash immediately. Okay, you have to know that sales do not convert into cash immediately. There are some cycle involved. Okay, there are some cycle involved on that. So as shares sales, you have money, you have capital, you get raw materials, and then raw materials turn into stock in process, or work in process, or work in progress, and then it goes into work in progress to finished goods, then finished goods to sale. Then after sales also, if you sell your products on credit, buy in Impact One, if you sell your product on credit, then you get sometimes to realize the cash back from the buyers, right? So those are those are the process. So sales, there are a time lag between realization of cash into cash back. Okay, so there are some process involved on that. So sufficient working capital is very, very, very necessary to sustain sales activity. Okay, so sufficient, if the business doesn't have sufficient sufficient working capital, then it has some effects on the production as well as the performance of the company. So therefore, there is a need for working capital, because sales do not convert into cash immediately. There is an invisible time lag. Okay, there is an invisible time lag between that. Okay, so sufficient working capital is necessary to sustain sales activity, right? So the operating cycle concept, operating cycle to continue how the cash, more the capital that you had for starting the business turn into cash again. Okay, convert into cash again. That is operating cycle. Okay, so the operating cycle concept penetrates to the heart of the working capital management in a more dynamic form. Okay, so you can see that the operating cycle is different in different business units. Okay, so different in different business units. If you look at point number 1 here, operating cycle of a manufacturing farm. So one operating cycle can be through like I have just now I have said that operating cycle is the conversion of your capital into cash. Okay, your profits back. So that is operating cycle. So the operating cycle will be suitable to a manufacturing farm. Let's say the above stated cycle will be suitable to manufacturing farm. The following is the operating cycle in a manufacturing farm. Okay, so taking the examples of the farms conversion of cash into raw materials means cash capital. We have capital, then we buy raw materials in case of manufacturing farm. Okay, then raw materials raw materials into work in process. Then number C, work in process into finished goods. Okay, then number D, finished goods into sales. That is, it may be cash sales or it may be credit. When we talk about cash sales, we realize cash immediately. When we talk about credit, we sell our products on credit, a buy-in. Okay, so later on we realize our cash back from the debtors. Okay, so that is the operating cycle of a manufacturing firm. So if the firm sells goods on cash basis, cash operating cycle returns the cycles. But if the firm sells goods on credit basis, there will be another cycle. Okay, so that is debtors into cash. Debtors ka aba kan penate ka, it has to return back into cash. Okay, we have to collect cash from our debtors, from our customers. Okay, who are our customers. So you can see here at the cash, we have capital here, cash. Then there is a operating cycle in a manufacturing farm, cash into raw materials. Okay, raw materials ka work in process, then finished goods then sales. Then if it is cash sales, then cash is going back immediately here. But if it is on credit basis, then we have debtors to whom whom we sell our products on credit. Okay, who owes money to us. So that is debtors. So after debtors, we realize back from debtors again. That is operating cycle in the manufacturing firm. This is the operating cycle. So it takes a lot of time to realize cash from cash back. I mean, to turn cash into cash again. So that is why there is a need for working capital. Okay, because your money, the funds that you got for running your operations will be stuck up somewhere here. Okay, will be stuck up somewhere here. For turning raw materials, for getting raw materials, there will be some time required, and for raw materials into work in progress, there will be lots of time required, and work in progress into finished goods, there will be a lot of time required, and from finished goods to sales. So in order to meet these requirements, then the firm needs working capital. Okay, so you can see here, stock of raw material is held in order to ensure smooth productions. So similarly, stock of finished goods have to be carried to meet the demand on a continuous basis. Goods are sold on credit for competitive reasons. Nowadays, uh, peoples are selling their products on credit. Most, no, I would not say major, but I mean, some people are following they follow the liberal credit policy. Okay, they sell products on credit, or sometimes if you look at the markets of electronics, or markets of any fashionable products, or markets of electrical appliances like mobile phones, then TV, fridge. Install, they have given, I mean, most of the shops in Mizoram also, they have given the options of easy monthly installments, EMI. Okay, they sell that. So for that is why, I mean, why is that? Is that we to have for a competitive purposes. Okay, so money are stuck up somewhere. Okay, somewhere. So we did not realize cash immediately back from the sales. So that is why working capital is very much required. Okay, thus adequate amount of funds has to be invested in current assets for a smooth and uninterrupted productions and sales process. Okay, now operating cycle of a non-manufacturing farm. Non-manufacturing farm can be to wholesalers, those who did not manufacture any products, but they include wholesalers, retailers, service farms which do not have manufacturing processes. They will have the direct conversion of finished goods into cash. Okay, so they will just get the finished goods from the manufacturing farms, and then wholesalers, sometimes they sell their products to retailers, then retailers to customers, and then service farms like gas deliveries, and then banking services. Okay, then public utility services. Those are non-manufacturing firms, and they have the direct conversion of finished goods into cash immediately. I mean, that is their cycle, operating cycle. In other words, they purchase finished goods from manufacturing firm and sell them into okay, and sell goods on credit sometimes. Okay, that is their operating cycle. So if you look at the figures, I mean, the diagram here, cash they had, and then they had stock of finished goods, and then to receivables continue to credit. If they sell their products on sales, I mean, on credit, they get debtors again, but they do not. If they sell their products on cash, then they have they realize cash immediately. That is, this is the the operating cycle of a non-manufacturing firm. So for them also, for wholesalers, retailers, and service firms, they also require working capital, okay, to realize cash back, to realize their capital back. So this as is a very simple formula of operating cycle, calculation of operating cycle for a manufacturing firm is given here. Yes, you can see here, operating cycle for a manufacturing firm can be computed with the following formula. Operating cycle is equal to ICP plus ARP. What is ICP? It is inventory conversion period plus accounts receivable period. Okay, so operating cycle, how much time it will take, you can calculate for this manufacturing farm using this formula. It is a very simple one. Operating cycle, ICP is can be computed with this formula, that is average inventory divided by cost of goods sold divided by 265 days. Then average accounts receivable period is means how much time it will required to realize your cash back from the debtors. That is average accounts receivable divided by sales divided by 265 days. This is the very simple formula for computation of operating cycle of a manufacturing farm. Okay, so illustration number one, here it is given, this book has given you some simple calculations with the ready-made informations. So you just look at this while I go through this. ABC company provided the following information and requested you to compute operating cycle. Sales is, let us suppose it is 3 lakh, okay? The sales is 3,000 lakh. Inventory is, the opening inventory is rupees 610 lakh. Closing is rupees 475 lakh. Receivables, this is accounts receivable is opening is 915 lakhs. And closing is 975 lakhs. Then cost of goods sold means that for the cost that you have incurred for making productions. Okay, that is rupees 2,675 lakhs. Then the solution to operating cycle is equal to, as we know this, operating cycle is inventory conversion period plus accounts receivable period. So inventory conversion period, if you look at this, we have to take the average. Okay, average is opening plus closing divided by 2. Okay, and cost of goods sold is rupees 2,675 lakhs divided by 265 days. So we got 74 days. Inventory conversion period is 74 days for this particular manufacturing farm. Okay, and then accounts receivable period is, receivables average is 945 lakhs and sales is 3,000 lakh divided by 265 days. We got 114.97 days. So as you can see here, we get inventory conversion period upon 74 days we got, and then accounts receivable period also we got 115 days almost. I mean, it's around 115 days. So altogether, the operating cycle for this ABC company is 189 days. Okay, so for 189 days, your capital will be stuck up somewhere in the production process. So for that 189 days out of 365 days in your calendar year, then you will be requiring. You will be calculating the requirements for your working capital, because your capital will be stuck up somewhere for around nearly 200 days out of 1 year. So OC, operating cycle 189 days, indicates that ABC company takes 189 days to convert raw materials into cash. Okay, in other words, some amount of cash is blocked for 189 days. Therefore, there is a need to have working capital. Okay, working capital ka adang production more to, in order to ensure a smooth operations. You'll be needing another extra. You'll be needing working capital, a very huge. For a very long period. Okay, so that is operating cycle. Okay, for manufacturing farm. Then we have cash conversion cycle. Any doubts on that?
No, miss.
Okay, I hope you understand. Swanin, 1 minute, just wait me for 1 minute, okay? Swanin? Okay, so That is the cash, the operating cycle, calculations of a manufacturing firm. Okay, now cash conversion cycle. Uh, Cash conversion cycle is that it is the amount of time a firm's resources are tied up, calculated by subtracting uh, the average payment period from the operating cycle. So in other words, the time period between the date a firm pay its suppliers and the day it receives cash from its suppliers. Of course, we need to pay our suppliers. Okay, we need to pay. We need to pay back the suppliers from whom we get our raw materials. Okay, so and is the time period between the date a firm paid its suppliers and the date it received cash from its customers. Okay, that is cash conversion cycle. So let us see what is cash conversion cycle here. Cash conversion cycle is equal to operating cycle minus average accounts payable period. Okay, APP, accounts payable period 22. The time it takes to pay off your suppliers. Okay, to pay off your wholesalers, maybe for a non-manufacturing firm, or for a manufacturing firm, it may be your suppliers, your raw materials suppliers. Okay, so operating cycles 2, average age of inventory plus average collection period. Okay, means accounts receivable period for this. So from the financial statements, we can determine the constituents of cash conversion cycles. Average average age of inventory is average inventory divided by cost of goods sold divided by 265 days. Then accounts receivable period is average accounts receivable divided by annual sales divided by 265 days, and average accounts payable is divided by cost of goods sold. Average accounts payable period is equal to average account divided by cost of goods sold divided by the 265 days. So these are how to calculate the conversions of your operating cycle into cash. So let us see here from the following information, calculate cash conversion cycle. We have again, the book has given us again some very simple and information, ready-made information. Average use of inventory is 80 days. Accounts receivable collection period is 50 days, and accounts payable period is 40 days. Let us see. Accounts cash conversion cycle is, as we know from the formula, it is operating cycle minus accounts payable period. So we have to calculate first operating cycle of this company. Okay, so average age of inventory is inventory 2, average use of inventory 2. Mostly this company has a stock of 80 days stock. Okay, 80 days inventory stock. It's for average use of inventory. Whatever they have stocked as a raw materials, they use it normally for around 80 days. Okay, 10 plus average receivable period. Average receivable period is normally this company realize their cash back within 50 days from the customers. Okay, so that is 50, that is 130 days. Then cash conversion cycle is 130 days minus accounts payable period, means within 40 days their debts, this company's debts are paid off. The managers usually paid off their debts in 40 days. So cash conversion cycle is 90 days for this company. Okay, ma'am. Hope you understand.
Yes, miss.
Okay, good. So then let us look into another simple calculations of the ready-made information given by your book again. From the following financial data of Vamsha Dara Company Limited, determine cash conversion cycle. Okay, cash conversion cycle sales is 1,587.95 lakh. Cost of goods sold is 1,406.27 lakh. Inventory is opening is 195. Closing is 202 lakhs. Accounts receivable opening is 423 lakhs. Closing is 449 lakh. Accounts payable is opening is 140 lakhs and closing is 168 lakh. Okay, so how to calculate operating cycle? I mean cash conversion cycle. Cash conversion cycle is OC, operating cycle, minus APP that we already know. Then cash operating cycle 2, average age of inventory plus accounts receivable period. Okay, average age of inventory is, let us calculate here, 199 lakhs. Okay, average age of inventory 2 heta average age of inventory calculation 2, average inventory divided by cost of goods sold, and it's 1. If you look at here, inventory 2, opening closing car, we will add this 1 divided by 2. Okay, so we got 199 lakhs. Okay, divided by cost of goods sold divided by 265 days. So we got average age of inventory is average use. Ni som nga this basun Vamsa Company Limited here. Usually they have a stock of 51 days. Okay, of inventory. Means usually they normally use 51. They normally lasted for 51 days when they stock their raw materials. Okay. Tuan, their normal stock of raw material lasted for 51 days, around 52 days, I would say. Now average accounts receivable, receivables period is heta formula ka and let us see back. Average accounts receivable divided by annual sales divided by 265 days, and it's 1. Average accounts receivable average, we took it again. This opening plus closing divided by 2. Opening by closing divided by 2 is 436 lakh divided by sales divided by 265 days. Okay, so we got average account receivables period is normally from the customer we realize back within 100 days. At 100 days this Vasundhara this particular company had realized their cash back within 100 days. That is very big. Okay, so accounts payable period is opening plus closing divided by cost of goods sold again divided by 265 days. That is average is 154 lakhs divided by cost of goods sold divided by 265 days. So within 40 days, suppliers are paid off normally. Okay, so operating cycle is AAI plus ARP. AAI, average use of average use of inventory is 51 days plus accounts receivable period is 151 days. Normally at around operating cycle is around 152 days. Okay, then normally after out of that operating cycle, we paid off the suppliers around 40 days. So the cash conversion cycle is normally around 112 days for this particular company. Okay, Andrew, Andrew, he understood. He understand that. So anyone who have doubts? Inla ma'am, are you still there?
Yes, miss.
Okay,
Yes,
I hope you all understand.
Yes, miss.
Okay, so
Ma'am?
this, yes, tell me. Anyone who would like to say something? Okay. If you have doubts, you can ask me and stop me anytime. Okay. So Now that is the conversion cycle, because for this company also it took 112 days to convert their capital into cash back. So if you minus, I mean, if you deduct these days from the 1 year, that is 365 days, you almost had only left with, you are left with only less than 200 days. So all 112 days, your capital are stuck up here. Okay, your capital is stuck up here. So these will help you to determine the number of working, I mean, the amount of working capital that you required. Okay, that is why there is a need for working capital. Okay, there is a need for working capital. So your capital will be stuck up somewhere. So there will be, of course, you have to run your current operations. I mean, all years, all through the years. So this determines the requirement for your working capital. Okay, so but of course, we cannot have excess working capital or inadequate working capital. So we need to maintain a balanced working capital, okay? Because there are dangers of excessive working capital. The book here mentioned that the dangers of excessive working capital are, it results in, number one, if you look at here, it results in unnecessary accumulation of inventories. If we have excessive can be to more than we want, okay, excessive, more than what we required. So it results in unnecessary accumulation of inventory, which leads to mishandling of inventories, okay? Like, for example, there may be some waste, there may be theft also, or there may be losses in its value, okay? Unnecessary accumulation of inventory is there. So we do not want excessive working capital. And number two, if you look at here, it is an indication of defective credit policy. Defective credit policy can be to the policy of the firm whether to sell their products on credit or not. If we sell, or if you have a pile of stocks, finished goods, okay, in your warehouse, then it shows that you don't have enough, I mean, your farms do not have efficient credit policy that is to follow. And then it is an indication of the very bad management, okay? So indication of defective credit policy is there, and then the slack collection period is also there. Then this leads to higher bad debt losses that reduce profits. So, and it makes management complacent, with which degenerates into managerial inefficiency. It shows that it shows their inefficiency on the management if you have excessive working capital, okay? Then also, if you look at here, accumulation of inventories tend to make speculative profits grow. If supposing if you keep a pile of good stocks, a pile of work in progress, a pile of raw materials, a pile of finished goods in your warehouse or in your shops or in your production, then it shows, it makes it will help you to make speculative profits, okay? Which is not, of course, which is not good, because speculative profits is not a profit, right? So we cannot just base our performance on the speculations, okay? So it makes the speculations grow. That is not good at all. So this type of speculations makes the firms to follow a liberal dividend policy, and it is difficult to cope with future because it is unable to make speculative profits. If you think that based on the number of stocks that you had, number of finished goods that you had, then if you think that you can go for a dividend policy, a liberal dividend policy where you could pay off your shareholders, then which is not actually realizable, which is not actually the true picture of what you had. So it is not good for the future. It shows managerial inefficiency, okay? Now, dangers of inadequate, excessive ka at halawa. Also, inadequate working capital is also not good, okay? So the following are the dangers of inadequate working capital. Following are the dangers of inadequate working capital. The first one is it stagnates growth, because when there is a sudden demand for your products, okay, if you don't have adequate working capital, you will not be able to produce what is demanded. So it stagnates growth. Growth is not possible in that situations, okay? So it is difficult to undertake profitable projects for non-availability of working capital. Then it becomes difficult to implement. It becomes difficult to implement operating plans and achieve the firm's target profit. If you do not have enough working capital, it becomes difficult, okay, to implement your plans, okay, and it is not good. So operating inefficiencies creep in when it becomes difficult even to meet day-to-day commitments. Operating inefficiency because if you could not meet the demand of the customers, then if you could not operate your plants, then operating efficiencies tries to come in. It leads to inefficient utilizations of fixed assets. Fixed assets can be how to equipment, their machineries can be how they. Okay, if there are no working capital or if there are inadequate working capital, then you cannot engage additional labor, you cannot engage employees, which result in inefficient utilizations of fixed assets, okay? It renders the firm unable to avail attractive credit policy opportunities. Now, for example, if there are suitable projects that the firm can take up, okay, if you don't have sufficient fund, okay, to run that, then it comes in that you fail to avail attractive credit policies. So the firm loses its reputation when it is not in a position to honor its short-term obligations, like suppliers. Then, if you could not pay suppliers, then the firm loses we lose our reputation, right? So therefore, the firm should maintain the right amount of working capital on a continuous basis. The right amount of working capital is influenced by several factors. Okay, I hope you understand that. Now, that is why we need to have working capital. Of course, we cannot have. Of course, we could not have excessive working capital, and we also and inadequate working capital is also not good. Okay, so now let me go to another topic, and then I will go to another topic, which is not difficult, the determinants of working capital. Bitte, don't. This is my slides. I mean, the next topic that I wanted to focus on, factors influencing working capital. We know that we need working capital, but there are certain factors which determines the amount of working capital that the business requires. So what are those factors? Okay, what are those factors? Let me factors see. We will just see what are the factors influencing working capital. Then we will finish, okay, the class for today. Then factors influencing working capital. Of course, like I have mentioned, we know that the business firm needs working capital, but why? I mean, how much is required, and how much is required, and then what are the factors which determines the requirements of the working capital of a particular business? Number one is nature of business. Nature of business determines the amount of working capital required. Okay, so let's see if you have look at this third line here. Trading and finance firms have a very small investment in fixed assets. Trading which takes their which do not involve in the manufacturing process, manufacturing of products. Then they need a very small investment in fixed assets. Fixed assets and fixed assets too, assets which are durable, assets which are big. Okay, in nature, assets like equipment, big buildings, okay, those are fixed, which are not easily converted into cash immediately. So those those trading and finance firm, they have a very small investment in fixed assets. So they require more working capital. Okay, finance firms kan tida po. And tinan those who lend out money for business. Like for example, financial institutions kan tite, more ICICI, more banks kan tite, kang how can they need more working capital for running their operations, right? So in contrast, public utility concerns rendering public services require huge investment in fixed assets. Like for example, public utility concerns can be one, those who produces electricity, those who produces liquefied petroleum gas, okay, gas there more, and those who supply water. Okay, the public utility concerns can be how to, they have invested a lot of money in fixed assets. Oh, fixed assets can be bungrua akan. They have invested a lot, so they need less working capital. Working capital. So ang item tolo ni, they need working capital for paying their MR employees or their daily workers only, right? So the requirement of current assets in such concern is usually less due to cash sales. Yes, we do not take on credits, right? Electricity, so of course, we pay them on a monthly basis, okay, monthly basis, but they realize cash immediately, okay, for 30 days only for electricity and for water suppliers. I mean water supply. Normally the cash conversion period is 30 days. So the requirements of working capital is less in such case, okay? But in trading concerns, the amount of working capital is less than in the manufacturing concern, since there is no production of goods and services involved. But in a service industry like banks, the amount of working capital required is very, very high. The relative importance of current assets to total assets will indicate the required intensity of planning and control efforts in working capital management area. So it depends upon the nature of the business. And number two is size of the business. For example, it may be a good that a firm's size measured in terms of assets or sales affect the need for working capital, okay? But size may be measured in terms of a scale of operations, okay? So a firm with large scale operations need more working capital than a small firm with small scale operations. For example, those who build ships, those who build aeroplanes, okay, they need very working capital, right? More working capital as compared with the one with small bakery farms here in Aizawl. So a firm with large-scale operations need more working capital than a small firm with small-scale operations. Okay, so if a small firm may use extra current assets as a cushion against cash flow interruptions. So bigger firms may have like for example, sometimes bigger firms they have many sources of funds. They can get easily the capital that they require from many sources. So it depends upon, I mean, this determines also the requirements of working capital as compared to the smaller farms also, okay? Then production cycle process, okay? Production cycle continue, and the time that the cash, I mean the conversion is made from cash to cash, okay? So production cycle is, this is another factors which has bearing on the quantum of working capital. The term production cycle refers to the time involved in manufacturing of goods, okay? In other words, it covers the time span between the management of raw materials and the completion of manufacturing process leading to production of finished goods. Longer the production cycle, the higher will be the working capital requirement and vice versa. So if, let's for example, for soap making business, you can make as many as soaps in a day, right? But for soap industry, the working capital requirement may be less. But if you take the examples of again the examples of a shipping industry, then to build one ship, it takes like 1 year, or it takes more than 1 year sometimes, right? It depends upon the size of the ships. So For the longer production cycle, the working capital requirement will be more. So that is production cycle process and production policy. Production policy also determines the production policy also determines the requirements of the working capital. Let's say, for example, if it is production, means whether it is continuous or seasonal production, whether it is continuous or seasonal production, or what kind of production policies should be followed. For example, uh, let's say, for example, in production and sales go simultaneously, the amount of working capital required is less. Let's say, for example, fast-moving consumer goods. Fast-moving consumer goods can be also, which are non-durable items. Okay, non-durable items are one. Sales cash car, they meet cash immediately. Okay, they realize cash immediately because production then they realize cash immediately within a day or within 2 or 3 days. So working capital requirement will be less for fast moving consumer goods, but sales will be only seasonal and production will take place throughout the year continuously. The amount of working capital required is very high. Then if the sales is only seasonal, let's say, for example, raincoat, kantite, umbrella business, kantite, more. Those, if the sales are seasonal, if the production are seasonal, then they require, of course, production has to go on for the whole year, then, but they could sell only on the season. So that is, for them, they require a high working capital. Okay, then terms of purchase and sales. The credit policy relating to sales and purchases also affects the working capital. Credit policy can be too, whether you are going to pay, whether you are going to let your customers to buy on credit or not. Okay, so it depends upon that. I mean, the requirements of working capital depends upon that. If the company purchases raw material in cash and sells goods on credit, it will require large amount of working capital. On the contrary, a concern having credit facilities for the purchase of raw materials and allowing no credit to its customers will require lesser amount of working capital. If your suppliers are giving you a more time to pay off their debts, okay, then to pay off your debts, to pay off the money for the raw materials that you got, then your working capital requirement may be less. But if the suppliers does not give you any time for any day for paying off your debts, then working capital requirements will be very much large. Okay, so that is terms of purchase and sales. Then business cycle, the amount of working capital requirements of a firm varies with every movement of the business cycle. For example, upward phase, and boom period can be one. Boom period can be one where you have a very large number of sales. Then for that you need more working capital. Okay, for downsizing phase, mean the recession period. In this case, the need for working capital will be much less since there is no growth in sales. So the business cycles also determines the requirement for working capital. Okay. Then growth and expansions. As company grows, it is logical to expect that a larger amount of working capital is required, right? So for a growing company, we need more working capital, and for expanding companies also we need more working capital. Okay. Then scarce availability of raw materials and demand for if your business depends upon the scarce raw materials which you could not find easily. Okay, when there are some stocks of those scarce raw materials, you need to have a good stock of that stock. You need to have a good stocks of that scarce raw materials. So for that you need a large amount of working capital. To get your raw materials on time. Right, so scarce raw materials can be how to and none for sold can be that, so it is very easy to get it. Okay, then this is not a scarce products. So for diamond can be that scarce and we cannot hardly find it. Right, we hardly found it. And then the scarce raw materials ang haukatsu which could not be procured easily. So when there are some stocks on that scarce raw materials, then you need to buy it immediately. So for that, you need more working capital. Okay. Then profit level, that's one. profit level. So firms may differ in their capacity to generate profits. So some firms enjoy a dominant position due to quality or a good marketing management or monopoly power in the market and earn a high profit. So those who are having those companies who are having a marketing skills, good marketing management, or those who are in the monopoly market, mean monopoly market country too, where there are only sellers, few sellers are there. Okay, I mean single seller or maybe 2 or 3 sellers. Then they are a very high profit. For example, TV cable at the po. Tunapo, we have only Zonet and LPS. Okay, Zonet and LPS Oma. Of course, we have Netflix the Polom Thomas. So they don't have any Mizo channels, so they are in the monopoly market. So they earn a very good amount of profit. Okay, so uh, so if you earn a high profit, then you have working capital. Okay, in the business you have working capital. So a firm with high profit level require less working capital. Okay, then level of taxes. The amount of taxes to be paid is determined by the tax authorities. We know that. So the management has no discretion in this respect. So the amount, the companies very often pay tax in advance on the basis of the profit of the previous years. So therefore, tax is an important aspect of working capital planning. Okay. Then if tax liability increases, then it leads to an increase in the requirement of working capital and vice versa. So tax planning is very, very important. The level of taxes that you are going to pay determines the number of working capital that you are going to require, the amount of working capital that you are going to require. And I'm almost finished, okay? 11 years dividend policy. Dividend policy can teach you whether you are going to pay out profits or earnings to your shareholders or not. Okay, so if the company is following a liberal dividend policy, means that if the company often pays the shareholders their earnings, then they need more working capital. Okay, then depreciation policy. Depreciation policy is also, of course, it is indirect. Okay, the effect of depreciation policy on working capital is indirect, but more depreciation provision, depreciation can lead to the loss in the value of the machines. Okay, so if more depreciation provisions are made in the company, the amount of working capital required is less. Okay, because you have kept some reserve, you have kept some money reserved for that depreciation time, that depreciation era. So less working capital will be required. Okay, so if there are no depreciation provisions, then the amount of working capital requirement will be large. Okay, price level changes. Let's say, for example, if the amount of if there is the rise in the price of the raw materials, then the higher the amount of working capital. Okay, so if there are some like companies who can raise their prices, who can raise their products immediately because of the rise in the price of raw materials, then no problem for them. The requirement, the capital requirement, I mean the working capital requirement may be same for them. Who could not raise their products immediately, the price of their products immediately, then they need working capital. Okay, operating efficiency. So if the management team is very good in your company, and if they could operate your business efficiently, then you need less working capital. Okay, so if the management is not good, then you may require a big working capital to improve your profitability and productions. Okay, then availability of credit. The need for working capital in a firm will be less if it avails liberal credit policy. Okay, so and finance, a firm, those firms which can get bank credit facilities so easily. Okay, their working capital requirement, they can get it whenever they want. Okay, so they can perform their business activities and less working capital, and they need less working capital than a firm without such credit facility. Okay, so if you can get easy access to credit facility, then the requirements of working capital may be less. Okay, so other factors at 116, the last point is that in addition to the above factors, there are a number of other factors which affect the requirement of working capital. Some of them are close coordination between production and distribution policy, an absence of specialization in the distribution of products, the means of transportation and communication, the hazards and contingencies inherent in a particular type of business, credit policy of RBI, inventory policies, management attitude and wages, government policies, and so on. So these also affects the working capital requirement of a business firm, apart from those which are already mentioned. So I hope you understand that those are the determinants of working capital requirements. Okay. Now that is all for today's class. I will now take your attendance. First one is Andrew.